As Alex said, I'm not just the quality director at Mock McDonald, but I'm seconded to support Colin and the wider Babcock team as head of quality for the major infrastructure projects programme at Devonport. And we're going to cover key things today: introduction to Devonport, outline what the challenge is, scoping and developing how we're going to address that challenge, some updates on where we are in relation to implementation in that journey, look at some lessons learned or tips for success that hopefully you can apply to your sort of projects, and then looking at some outcomes and celebrations.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Colin Cahoon, and I am Quality Manager for the Assurance Function at Devonport Royal Dockyard. We thought we'd start this off by just giving people some insight and overview of Devonport and what it looks like and what the challenges are for the customer, who are essentially the submarine delivery agency, the Ministry of Defence and the Royal Navy. So Devonport itself, the dockyard, it's a co-located naval base, privately owned by Devonport Royal Dockyard Limited, or more commonly known as Babcock. It's the largest marine employer in the southwest of England, and it's the sole home to deep maintenance delivery for the Royal Navy submarine fleet. We also maintain and look after warships as well. It's a nuclear licence site defined by a blue line, which in some cases consists of a blue painted line around the dockyard. It's regulated by the Office of Nuclear Regulation, the governmental regulatory body, with DRDL Managing Director as the licence holder for the site. So some of the challenges that Devonport faces in the upcoming years is due to capacity, and that's the size and shape of the Royal Navy's submarine fleet and its surface warship fleet. It's obviously changed as geopolitical and defence structures have changed, but there's a forecasted increase when the number of submarine work streams that are going to go through Devonport within the next 10, 15 or even 30 years. So the capability within Devonport itself, it needs to enhance a step change to enable a wider submarine program, and also the introduction of new sort of boat classes and platform classes into the Royal Navy. It's obviously a very complex and diverse dockyard. It's got multiple customers, multiple stakeholders, and even multiple ownership around the site. So there's a lot of commercial mechanisms and legacy arrangements to deliver work and maintain the capability of the site. And obviously the actual infrastructure or the fabric of the site, there hasn't been major sort of upgrades or investment within the site for a number of years, primarily since the last classes of submarine were released at the turn of the century. So it means a significant increase in investment has to be undertaken. So obviously looking at the dockyards, it's a 300-year-old dockyard, and this sort of gives an overview of time as it has passed through the dockyard. And one thing that's obviously apparent is there's lots of listed and historical England buildings, which brings their own unique challenges to the work we undertake in the dockyard. But if we were to take a sort of quick bullet point step through 300 years, the original naval base was commissioned in 1691, and it has grown from the south to north along the sort of coast, north of Plymouth and into the Tamar estuary. So the dockyard has expanded over time, and it's had its own problems during the Second World War with the Blitz, and it was significantly damaged. During the 70s, we upgraded to new docks primarily for surface fleet, and it was really around sort of the 80s and the 90s that we started to undertake deep maintenance of submarines with a specialist sort of nuclear license site being developed. And as we move forward in the sort of 2018, where we were bringing more frigates in and putting more capacity into the dockyard itself, was decided within the nuclear license site we would have to upgrade and modify the whole site for the new incoming classes of submarines. So that program is called One Devonport. Again, to try and give a size of the sort of complexity or the scope or scale of the dockyard, we have this slide here, which is the dockyard by numbers. Lots of statistics there, and probably some that are to give some sort of scale to. There's 6 miles of dockyard walls that sort of encapsulate the dockyard. There's 650 individual buildings within the dockyard, of which 152 of them are listed buildings. We facilitate 40,000 tug operations within a calendar year and 5,000 shipping movements per year. We have 4 miles of waterfront leading out onto the Tamar River and estuary, where we bring the platforms into the dockyard. Again, some stats there around the employment and what we contribute to the overall economy in Plymouth, which we can talk about in more detail. And one that always sticks out to me, we manage 6,100 parking spaces, of which I've never had a car in. They're very difficult to get into. Like I say, hopefully that gives us, and again, a bit more insight into our customer. And the map, the global map, portrays their global missions where they have taskings and deployments around the globe. And I suppose if we look at this, the customer's mission objectives, they really are to prevent conflict, protect their economy, enable all the soft diplomacy that they do globally, humanitarian assistance, provide security at sea. And that's bundled up into 3 main mission enablers, which is what we call CASD, Continuous at Sea Deterrent, for the nuclear platforms, and support to the carrier strike group with the new aircraft carriers, the Queen Elizabeth and the Prince Charles. Where Devonport fits in are the 2 parts at the bottom, where we try and provide program or value stream delivery for these platforms. And obviously we try to provide the critical national infrastructure and capability to maintain the fleet. Again, looking at Devonport regionally within the Southwest, and then some more sort of numbers around that. Nationally within the UK, within defence is 2.2% of GDP for the UK. Babcock encapsulates 8.8% of that defence. And Devonport itself is circa 20% of Babcock. Within the southwest of England, we have probably around 20,000 full-time jobs, 10,500 people employed directly on site, and upwards of 9,000 people employed in supply chain. We spend about 173 million in the southwest and the wider UK. Looking inward at Plymouth itself as a city, we employ 11,500 people in full-time employment, which coincidentally is 11.5% of Plymouth employment. And we have a £52 million supply chain. Probably better explained by the 2 graphics. The red heat map there is really per population, where they work with or where they come from around the area and work in the Devonport dockyard. And the blue dots are on the supply chain and where they are focused around the southwest of England. Obviously, the dockyard itself, we're committed to initiatives such as levelling up, STEM, in terms of sustainability, with travel to work schemes, volunteering and sponsorships. And we have a commitment to the nations and the community and the Royal Navy Covenant.
Okay, so that's given us a good overview and setting the scene. This by no means is to scale at all. As Colin said, this is spread across 6 miles of seafront, 4 miles of seafront and 6 miles of the yard. It's split in effect in the yard into 3 key areas: South Yard, Mortis Yard and North Yard. At the moment, the majority of the nuclear implicated works is happening within North Yard, and we'll come on in a moment to show the proximity and the core interface dependencies. But this is the Devonport blueprint, and this shows key projects, and there's an awful lot of activity short term to 2023, but also looking at future programmes and future-proofing the yard for the Royal Navy and continuing that support long-term through 2040 and beyond. As we said, the opportunity/challenge is very complex, with lots of stakeholders, lots of interested parties, and obviously nationally strategically important to the Ministry of Defence and UK PLC. To enable Babcock's and supporting the infrastructure investment portfolio, Cosmot, which is a joint venture of Costain and McDonald, secured the Delivery Partner Commission. There were, as Colin said, other contracts and mechanisms in place and other people in the chain, as it were. And it was our job as delivery partner to integrate those and bring them together, work into the overall vision. And we started initially back in 2020, carrying out a gap analysis, looking at what resources and capabilities we had as is, what we actually needed to achieve to peak, but also leaving a lasting legacy to the business. And it became apparent very quickly, whilst there were really good works going on in certain areas with certain partners, there wasn't a consistent, cohesive approach. And it was a requirement really for success of the project to pool over all that expertise and move forward together as one united team. And from that initial premise, the One Facilities strategy was developed, and that integrated, as I said, from Cosmot, but incorporated other delivery partners, Mace, Bechtel, Cavendish Nuclear, but also supply chain partners, all the main works contractors, the wider DRDL team, and indeed the wider Babcock team. So where did we start? So as I said, we undertook an initial review. The BMS at Devonport had quite rightly, and I'd probably get in a bit of trouble for saying this publicly, but Devonport is in effect a really big and really complex submarine and warship garage. We are looking at infrastructure projects and major significant construction. The management system at Devonport was obviously geared to maintenance and ensuring that our fleet was maintained in a good state of repair. So there was obviously a requirement for us to look at the BMS and bring it to be fit for purpose for us to deliver on a complex and major infrastructure project. But there were a lot of already really strong requirements around the nuclear licensing conditions, the management system that was existing. So any changes that had to happen, it was more a case of evolution rather than revolution. And we applied a principle of what we call the ABC program, keeping things as simple as ABC, where when we looked at the processes, could we adopt them as they were? Could we blend them to enhance and include any major project / construction requirements? Or is it the case that actually this is very different to what the core BMS requirement is, and therefore we need to create supporting documents to support the major infrastructure program? And that analysis went through all the levels of governance it needed to at Babcock, and the action plan that came out at the end was agreed by all parties and is in progress in flight as we speak. And the only way that we could move this iceberg was to get full collaborative approach with all the partners in place, with Babcock themselves and with the leadership team, supporting the messaging and supporting what we were trying to achieve here, whilst understanding business as usual had to go on, as well as these changes needed to happen. One of the key critical success factors we have to deliver is quality assurance across the 4 lines of defence throughout the whole of the project life cycle, through design, through manufacturing, from the safety case, through to design, through to manufacturing, construction, installation and commissioning, and bringing back into service for the dockyard. So where do we start? We aligned a managed service proposal against the CQI competency framework, but we also launched what was called the Safety First, Quality Always brand, for want of a better phrase, where we could pin all of our strategic objectives against safety first, quality always, and moving the culture piece at the same time. As I said, Devonport is a maintenance, refurbishment, repair facility. It's a major investment program, but absolutely operations need to continue seamlessly, dare I say, throughout the whole of the upgrade program. Stage gate requirements were in place at Babcock. These had to be underpinned with the requirements from the UK Infrastructure Projects Authority. We have a lot of scrutiny with public funding, obviously, and quite rightly from central government. We need to make sure that the requirements being asked of our projects were robust enough to stand that scrutiny, and also include an operational nuclear safety facility. Ensuring that our delivery team are fully SQEP, and if people outside the industry don't understand SQEP, they're suitably qualified and experienced personnel against the nuclear baseline, whilst we were moving to the one facilities quality strategy, delivering 4 lines of defence, as I say, across all projects, but also across all work streams and disciplines. We had improvement groups, lots and lots of improvement groups and discussions, and applied a career development mapping for our own and for the wider team to upskill and ensure that we leave a lasting legacy. It was quite pivotal, setting out a clear vision and empowering the team themselves to lead on improvement initiatives and enabling them to support the programme, because 30 heads are better than 5. And as I said, safety first, quality always was our strapline to secure buy-in, not just internally to the business, but also from our clients also as well. So these are some of the current state workshops that we had, and we were looking to understand where we were, where we need to get to, but also bring in, and you can see there are several, sometimes felt like cast of thousands, but several interested parties all needing to be aligned and brought on the same page to take us to where we needed to be in future state to make this massive programme less.
So Judith talked there and showed us some images of how we tried to bring the interested parties and all the various strands of the golden thread of quality within Devonport together, and all the feedback and collaborative discussions, and even using some global people survey feedback from Babcock itself. We sat down and tried to create a consolidated framework for ourselves for this one facilities quality function. And again, keeping with the theme of the CQI framework, we decided that we would be able to demonstrate it best by looking at context, governance, assurance, improvement. And if we look down through some of the context as we started to form a view on our facilities framework, we're looking at contexts such as external and internal nuclear regulations, defense standards, licensing and authorizing conditions, down through regulator oversight, being cognizant of a greater approach to nuclear construction, making sure we embed that nuclear safety culture, and always try to work within our delivery partnered solutions. In terms of governance, Judith's already talked about having a clear structure and alignment within the Babcock business management system, and deploying a singular but consistent QA strategy or message. We also work with all the teams and all of the various roles within the team to create consolidated and considered documentation from a functional quality perspective to feed into the management system and the project life cycles. Again, always trying to be appropriate and proportionate within our remit as quality oversight, and supporting program and stakeholder objectives. And again, that sort of fed in governance terms and a rationalized or a simplified approach to business management. In terms of assurance, again, Judith alluded to, we work within the 4 lines of defense assurance model. We're quite clear that we provide functional or independent oversight to the business, or what we call assuring assurance. We're using a risk-based approach, and another key word for us is to dispatch or administer progressive assurance through these project phases or life cycles. Again, we play a part in the intelligent customer, which is more nuclear parlance, and trying to embed or grow that safety first, quality always approach. We took an objective upon ourselves to try and use digital quality or drive ourselves with digital quality where possible. And in terms of improvement, one of the digital quality initiatives is a quality phase gate review process, which we have a small slide on. We created a facilities non-conformance process. We started looking in a more educated way or informed way about our resource planning and how we embed or implement more resources. And again, looking at the resilience and flexibility within our resource and our integrated project QA teams. And obviously how we can apply the right levels of engagement to supply chains and create quality dashboards. In terms of leadership, we're trying to be strategy and objective focused. We're trying to look at career progression planning for our teams alongside succession planning, and trying to ensure that we have that nuclear baseline management, create that quality culture of safety first and quality always, and down along the bottom of the slide, you can see we try and adopt and adhere to what we call our Babcock purpose and principles. The Babcock principles are these 6 fairly simple but quite quality aligned principles of being courageous, curious, and kind. Always to think about outcomes and be collaborative, but ultimately to own and deliver. And we have also added from a functional quality point of view, as we move along through our strategy, we also should be cognizant of trying to learn from experience and turn that into continuous improvement. So that's our functional framework that we try to come out of all our meetings and discussions with. Post that phase, we looked at what we had within the sort of the dockyard itself, within assurance or quality assurance, and the top black box we're looking at there, we can see sort of various strands and functional elements within assurance at Devonport. We have an individual supply chain quality assurance team. We had a facilities quality assurance BMS. We have a central audit function within assurance, and then we had the new delivery partner led QA functions that were working in some of the docks and basins, and then we had the incumbent Devonport nuclear QA functions, which is more or less my own team. And what we tried to do was look and take people and level up and bring them into this one facilities team, which we're trying to portray down here. So Judith and I generally call this our chessboard, where we sit like Gary Kasparov and Magnus Carlsen and move our pieces about and try and level up to make sure we've got that robustness and resilience within all the teams. If we just look down the lines, they are major programs within the overall upgrade and facilities sector. So you can see the different colors reflect different roles and different partners within each program. And we continue to do that on a regular basis to ensure we've got that dynamism and strength and depth and experience through all the teams, depending on where the projects are in their life cycle. So it's a very fluid piece. I think we talk about it once or twice a week. Another thing we alluded to and quite key for us is to have the right people and then have them properly qualified within what we call our nuclear baseline. And then in the nuclear world, again, we talk about SQUEP, so qualified and experienced people. Obviously, a lot of recruitment and onboarding of new people within these teams. So we've sat down and we've looked at what we call our TORs, or terms of reference and responsibility, for each individual quality role. That outlines and identifies the requirements or the criteria to be suitably qualified and experienced. So what we're doing is sitting down with our sort of personal development reviews with each individual and looking at the gap and trying to close the gap throughout those sort of annual reviews. We've created fundamentally a competency matrix where we can look at when we're looking through our team, and that gives us that overview to see where the best people or best fit roles are within each sort of program as we require them. And QSLT is the quality senior leadership team, who are the quality principals who sit with Judith and myself. And obviously we provide funding and administer for dispatch training requirements within the business. So we turn that sort of sea of red into a sea of green on our competency matrix. So that's, again, a process we move along. We did talk about digital solutions, and one of the more mature projects within one of the docks, we have worked with the project controls office, and we've created or generated what we call quality phase reviews. And these are essentially 4 quality gate reviews, which are triggered by the program or schedule activity completion times. And although that's hard to see, what the QA team are basically getting a sort of demand to do their quality gate reviews or phase reviews upon completion of these key phases. And we take them as at the end of design, the start of physical work, the end of physical work, and at the handover or handback process. And the pie charts are basically indicating reviews that have been undertaken by the QA team, and what the dashboard is portraying to the senior project leaders are that the reviews undertaken are either green, amber, or red. Some of the details sort of automatically populates about why they're green, amber, or red. And what this dashboard using Power BI does, it also gives us a sort of forecast signal of how many reviews we're going to pick up based on the program or the schedules in the next few months. But again, that allows Judith and myself to plan and move people around and look at what we're doing. A good use of Power BI and the programs and the schedules to lead delivery of quality in a proactive or progressive manner.
So looking at some of the lessons learned and hopefully some tips that you can adopt yourselves. So this is basically my interpretation to say, really, we need to clearly identify what is the vision. The requirement for us was just to leave your parent company badges at the door. We one team. This is the way we're moving forward. And coming back and revisiting that vision when things got quite sticky and people got quite precious, even on simple things, seemingly simple things like terminology. It's like, guys, we're not going to die in a ditch over this. This is what we're trying to achieve, and recalibrate and bringing people back into what's the outcome required. What, where are we trying to get to here? So that was really important in de-escalating a lot of challenges, focusing on the vision. Equally important is being very clear on scope of what we want to achieve. We are problem solvers by nature in the quality world, and we get to see an overview of everything that's going on across the projects and the portfolio. So we really have to be careful and guard against scope creep and or managing changes to scope very robustly. The next piece is know your place in the overall picture. We are providing assurance, we are supporting in relation to the integrated assurance model, we're not leading on, and therefore we shouldn't get too involved in actually that solutioning. We support it, but if we get too involved, we end up holding the baby, really. So that's knowing your place and making sure that you deliver brilliant basics on what we're supposed to be doing rather than outside of our remit, because again, from a collaboration viewpoint, that can upset people if we step on outside and onto other people's toes, as it were. SQEP, I can't say this enough, and I think we've mentioned this quite clearly. Having the right people in the right job with the right behaviours and attitudes and approach is vital to success of any major project, especially when there's lots of people and we don't always get it right. But in the main, as I said, coming back to the vision, de-escalates lots of challenges. Very clearly understanding strengths and weaknesses within the team gives us opportunity to not just play to the strengths of certain individuals, but also to identify areas for development with those people, and being willing to challenge and take people out of their comfort zones so they can have personal growth and support to the project. And quite vitally as well, we've had several experiences where having, dare I say, a naive question has triggered a set of new thinking and taken us to a different solution or a better solution, whichever way you want to look at that, around the continuous improvement. Whereas people who had relied on the things that happened previously may not have asked those questions in the same way. So that's been really valuable. Teamwork, for sure. We are functional support into projects. We report functionally. There are several functions that we interface with. In fact, I can't think of any function really we don't interface with, some more than others. But teamwork and supporting the project, but being also mindful that we are there for independent assurance. So in the main, looking at providing the carrot, as it were, but being there and needing to provide stick as needs be, but in a collaborative way. My jack of straws, as I keep saying to my guys, keep it simple. The more complex you build your requirements, your procedures, they need to be risk-based approach. They need to be applied proportionately. Keep it simple. The more complex it is, the harder it is to unpick and clearly define roles and responsibilities. Because if it's completely complex, it becomes everybody, somebody, nobody's responsibility. And to be fair, if there was one golden nugget that I'd give to anybody, and I keep saying to my guys, just because you can doesn't mean you should. The minute, as I said, you step into the fix it pit, that becomes your problem, and that can divert you from what your core requirement is, because therefore the person you've liberated no longer has a problem, it's your problem. So that would be my golden nugget, really. Key outcomes. We are on a journey, and it does sound twee and a bit cliched, but it's cliched for a reason. We are coming toward the end of Horizon 2 now. We have delivered some significant step changes. We are able to deliver robust assurance and demonstrable compliance across the portfolio at all stages of the project, or not, as the case may be, but we do know where our skeletons stay. Clear strategy and a united approach to quality and assurance across all stakeholders. And as I said, that was one of our key critical success factors. We were already there, and we need to build on that to move forward. Our next stage, really looking at agile resource and succession planning and sharing the knowledge across the whole of the portfolios. Like I said, it's got really good pockets of excellence that we can share and make consistent. First team in Babcock, we are a bit of a trailblazer, moving our management system requirements, documented and published into a more construction-based focus. And they've been published now. We are now on the campaign to get the message out there with reporting, with toolbox talks and winning hearts and minds across the piece. Breaking down, quality dashboard Colin's already covered. Breaking down siloed working, increasing sharing of best practice, not just, and this is quite critical as well, not just from what we're doing at Babcock. We've got a plethora of people from various supply chain partners, as we said, that have experience outside of the dockyard, and actually being able to grab that information, apply lessons learned that happened on High Speed 2 or Crossrail or Hinkley Point or wherever, having that ability to reach back into our parent companies and draw that learning in is really quite key for us. Increased teamwork and cross-project support. One of our projects is coming to an end. As we know, the quality documentation tsunamis towards the end of the project. Being able to liberate some of our wider team resource to support that team has been quite key and quite critical, and would have been next to impossible to do before we started on this journey, where they were very much in siloed and commercial. You're only allowed to book to that particular project, etc. But that's been overcome. And our team sharing best practice between each other. We've seen that. That's really good. And collaboration at all levels, from Mod, Babcock, SDU, MOT, Costing, Cosmot, other delivery partners, and moving then into the fully managed quality service. This is just a quick snapshot. The next piece will show this in much better clarity for you. Just to wrap up, these docks are massive. You can see at the bottom that we've got machinery in the bottom of the dock. They are massive. They fit a submarine. You look on the telly, you look on the web, the submarines look really quite cute, fit in your bathtub. These are massive bathtubs, and they're a very close proximity to each other, and therefore work happening on 9 dock impacts 10 dock, impacts the basin, etc. So all those codependencies on projects are important. As Colin said, there is a significant amount of listed buildings. Having consent to upgrade in that environment is very challenging. But there are successes. We've cleared sites. We've got site preparation. We've been able to invest through this programme into new facilities, occupational health centre, new car parks, pass office, etc., new site access. But at peak, we're going to have tons of people coming on site, deliveries, etc., happening, and we're bracing ourselves for that. So thank you very much for spending your time listening this morning. There's an opportunity now for Q&A, so I'll hand back to Alex.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Judith, and thanks, Colin. That was a really fascinating insight particularly into an environment, a project that the general public, the hoi polloi, wouldn't necessarily get sight of. I thought it was very fascinating. We've had a number of questions come in. We've got just over 15 minutes to try and get through some of them. So my apologies if we don't address every single question. I'll try to draw out some of the key themes, and perhaps we'll be able to address some of these offline as well if we don't have time to finish. Do feel free to keep submitting your questions over the next 15 minutes, and we'll see how we get on. So if I can just have a quick scoot through and try and identify some of the themes in the questions here. I think one One of the things that sprung to mind is that with a £52 million supply chain, this is a project of national significance, as you mentioned at the beginning. There are many and varied interested parties. What was the most significant challenge in managing such a large and complex network of stakeholders? How did you address it?
I think, as I showed in the presentation, really, we held a raft of stakeholder engagement sessions. I think enabling people to have their say, good, bad and ugly, so that it's on the table and we're able to address concerns systematically. That's been really helpful. And also building relationships. And that's been a big thing needed, especially if you come in the middle of the night and you're struggling for some permits or something. Having the relationships and the right people to go to is pretty key. So yeah, it sounds twee, but as back in the 80s I said, it's good to talk. It's painful sometimes, but being professional, as I said, for us coming back when things go sometimes bent out of shape, coming back to what's the vision, guys, what are we trying to achieve here, it was pretty critical. Do you have anything to add to that, Colin?
No, I do think a lot of kudos needs to go to the other people in the team, because Judith and I didn't do it ourselves, obviously. When it's putting the right people in with the right stakeholders and having really good, informed and intelligent conversations. So there obviously is a host of people that sit beneath us in terms of principals and seniors, and there's lots of time spent sitting in design meetings, supply chain meetings, commercial meetings, and understanding the mechanisms and where they sit within there, and providing valuable input to those meetings, and selling our own strategy to them. There's a lot of not so much negotiation, but a lot of input and effort made by the team beneath us.
And it may be a bit of a cliche, but the importance there that you described of communication and being able to have frank and open conversations within that team. I really liked the phrase you used, the attitude of leave your badges at the door, we're all one team here, which I imagine must have been very helpful in engendering a common culture across that team. To what extent do you think a common culture of quality was embedded with that, and how critical do you think that was to the success and ongoing progress of this project?
So I think, as I said, we're still on a journey. For me, I don't care who gets the kudos as long as we make the progress we need to do. And I think that's important in and of itself, because who cares about the accolade if we are focusing on the outcomes? It's a team effort. Realistically, Colin said about our team, which has been absolutely amazing and put their shoulders to the press for sure. But we've had also robust support from functionally and board level as well, managing up and maintaining clear lines and telling people what we're intending to do and getting an endorsement has been really important as well, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and related to this set of questions, you stated, questions come in, you stated that you managed to shift resources at the end of the project to support the LTQR reviews. How did you gain buy-in from other functions to donate personnel to support the LTQR at the end of the project?
So LTQR wasn't from other functions, so it was within our team, but from other parts of our team. I guess really, again, back through to the collaborative working, people coming to the end of this project will be liberated to move on to other projects. And I think our project directors are very cognizant that at some point they are going to need to have all hands to the pump as well on a quid pro quo viewpoint. So we didn't really have resistance, I don't think, in any way to enable us to move our team around to where we needed it to be. There were obviously the usual sort of commercial discussions that had to happen, but the way we've set up as one facilities has enabled us to be able to book to a specific project irrespective of which route you've come into the team through.
Mm-hmm. And as individuals move on to other projects that you've just described, and again, this might be a slightly kind of cliche question, but if there was one lesson, if there was one experience from this particular project that you would like to see them take forward into future projects, maybe future organisations, what do you think the key, the primary lesson learned from this could or should be?
I think the key enabler and the key lesson that we're continually learning and trying to embed is a proactive progressive assurance. strategy. You know, these projects, and it sounds crazy to say it, but some of them have a 2, 3, 4 year life cycle. Putting people on their project and saying that's your project, we realized very quickly that didn't work. We have to flex and be dynamic with them projects to give people experience at all the different phases of those project life cycles. We can't have 20 people very experienced and understanding the design process for when we move into physical works or implementation and nobody's been there. So what we're constantly trying to do when we're saying we're moving people around is to give them experience at different phases of the life cycle, so that when we get to that big final push, and I'm guessing it's in 3 to 5 years time, we have a really resilient team around us that we can move to any part. It's investing in people, really. I think that we have to invest in people, and we have to get them to that level where they're confident and competent. And sometimes that maybe takes up more time or effort than we think we want, but the success we're getting out of it makes it really worth it.
Yeah. And competence and capability came across to me, perhaps because I particularly look out for those kind of aspects, but that came across to me as quite a priority in what you've been describing here. Can you tell me a bit more about how you managed the competence matrix? How easy was it to ensure that the wider team had the complete capability it needed? And were there any particular challenges? Were there any particular skills gaps or areas that needed particular attention and development?
Early on, we did, obviously, we got our terms of reference and responsibilities, which sets out the nuclear requirements against the nuclear baseline, or the nuclear training requirements, rather. But doesn't fully cover major projects. And the discussion that we had functionally really is we need people with major infrastructure project experience, and therefore we're happy to take resource with major project experience, and we will then train to fit for the nuclear aspects of the role. As Colin said, that approach resulted in us having quite a red skills matrix at the beginning, where we had people needing to go through a lot of training, with an added challenge of there are only a certain number of places provision for the training courses. And again, functionally, we've had really strong agreement. Some of our training courses and have been running weekly, make sure that we work through the demand signal. And we've had the training and the investment for us to do that. And our first coming out the other side, all turning green, are pretty close. But we know as we move into main works, we're going to be back more like 50%, where our existing cohort are deemed as fully competent. But the new guys, again, it's an iterative journey, and it's going to be ongoing, I think.
I think the biggest challenge, or the most obvious challenge for us as the incumbent Babcock people, are what I call Babcockification. When we bring people into the business, and we're one of a handful of licensees within the UK, and it's that sort of culture shift for people to understand they're now working as the licensee, and not a contractor to a licensee on a site. But that's been one of the things we've had to do quite quickly with people, is get them to think like the licensee and not the client or the contractor to the license holder. Because essentially that's what this team is doing, is acting as the assurance and informing the licensee that the assurance is good before we put these assets into service.
And shifting culture, shifting attitudes in that kind of way can be much more challenging than simply upskilling. So I don't envy that. Were there any particular aspects where there was either conscious or unconscious resistance to that change?
I'm not sure if resistance is the right phrase. As I said, we took the decision and strategically decided that we could, dare I say, backfill the nuclear part over major projects. What that has caused is some interesting challenge, and throughout the supply chain and main works contractors who have worked in domestic, shall we call it, even Hinckley is non-military. So we're an operational military base as well as a nuclear license site. Therefore, things like information security is quite rightly robust. And then when you've got people coming into the dockyard from the outside world, shall we say, it is typical that they go, on this project, we could take a photograph, demonstrate it was built properly, etc. We have quite serious constraints around information security and what that looks like because of the assets that might potentially be inadvertently captured. Those things really have caused quite a lot of angst across lots of people. And again, we're back to communication, explaining what we need, explaining why we need it. So that really has taken quite a lot more time than I would have originally have expected. And perhaps that was an unintended consequence of the strategy that we applied. But I think now we get into a place, I don't think the strategy we applied was the wrong strategy by any stretch, but that has brought with it its own unique challenges when people are not understanding the world in which and the constraint in which we have to operate.
Yeah. And I suppose bringing in so many different stakeholders from so many different places will only exaggerate that kind of challenge.
For sure. And obviously, the big challenge with the geopolitical arena around the world, where everybody that comes onto our site has to have full security clearance, quite rightly, it's a nuclear military base. That's beyond our control. Getting those public servants to do those reviews and get people security cleared takes time and lead time to get people in on site. That can cause frustrations, more so if there's an emergency situation that we need to get fixed, but we need to go through a process to get people, enable people onto site. So onboarding can be sometimes a bit of a challenge, but it's a known challenge and something that we're working through and trying to chip away and improve. But being mindful, we still need robust controls in place for very good reasons.
Thank you. I'm conscious of the time, but nonetheless, I'm going to squeeze in one more question, if I may. This has come up a couple of times. How have you managed the environmental aspects of the project, and what's the interrelationship between quality and environmental impact?
We do have a specialist environmental team and environmental specialists within each project. Quite a high contingent of our team are QHSE professionals, so they do environment safety as well. The site itself is ISO 14001 and indeed 45001 accredited, as well as ISO 9000. So we do have controls in place around that. But in the main, we work in effect. So in the docks, you saw a dry dock in a tidal bay. We have what's called a caisson that kind of blocks off, a bit like a cofferdam, I suppose, in non-Babcock parlance, or non-marine parlance, sorry. So that it makes it, if you like, a brownfield site rather than a marine environment per se. But we do have very strict permits, consents across the site that we have to adhere to, and our designs have to be mindful of. And as one would expect, we've got robust emergency prep procedures in place if there were any incident to deal with those and minimize any impact on the marine environment.
Yes, it's very wedded to our CDM arrangements on each project site, and by virtue of the fact, as I say, we're set up to deal with quite critical waste management procedures. So it's in our DNA to be very considerate and deal with any kind of environmental issues.
Thank you. We're very nearly at the end of our allotted time. So if I may, I'm going to bring this to a close now. I'm sorry that we didn't get through all the questions, and there are certainly some around digital transformation, cybersecurity threats, some more questions around the process, all of which would be fascinating to dive into some more, but we'll see what we can do to address these offline and share some of the responses later on if we may. May I just say thank you very much to Judith and to Colin for this really fascinating insight, for taking these questions and deeper explorations. I found it a really interesting session. I'm sure our other participants have as well. Before we round off, just a couple of housekeeping notices, if I may. All the webinars from this year's World Quality Week, as well as other webinars, events, presentations, are available in the members area of the CQI website, and the World Quality Week resources specifically on the CQI website in the open area there. So please do take the opportunity to revisit this webinar or to explore what else is there. And in doing so, consider how this contributes to your plans for your continued professional development. Where there are aspects that you've learned, things that you've picked up from these sessions, where they contribute to your further knowledge, understanding, or skill, then consider how you can reflect that in your CPD log. It's a very important aspect of membership of the CQI. Finally, just to reiterate my thanks to Judith and Colin, thank you very much. Thank you for everyone for attending, and we look forward to celebrating the rest of World Quality Week. But for now, thank you very much and goodbye.